morning. You're listening to Insurance Matchmaking, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance. And now, sharing his knowledge, here's your host, Matt Libby.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to Insurance Matchmaking. It's been a whirlwind for me the last few days, just having a lot going on. I think I talked a little bit about it last week that I'd gone to a conference in Nashville and working on some restructuring some things at the office and trying to, get some of the procedures and things like that, making some of those changes and working with these coaching sessions. So I feel real busy again. And actually, I started to say busy's great, but busy when you're working with clients is better. But I realized it's like, I did help work with some clients. And I think that added some of the, say frustration's the right word, just that's kind of the sense of urgency or the busyness was because there was people that I probably could have worked with on those days I was gone, and so I was kind of playing catch up also. So, but I mean, it's a good thing. I was able to help more people, but I only had like 3 days last week to do it instead of 5. So it did seem like I was doing a lot, but. Just kind of want to, remind, as I mentioned, I was able to help, 3 people. I say 3 people, sometimes, that's 3 families. I may be only taking care of one member of the family because they're the one that had the specific need, but it helps the whole family. It, helps, know that they're covering, themselves against higher medical costs, but also that being able, just that peace of mind that, hey, now this is taken care of. And what I run into seems like right now, again, I've talked about how, October to December, I'm really busy. The rest of the year I have to work. And this time of year, as we refer to in the business, is ROY, rest of the year. We love our acronyms. But so I'm running into people who have job changes or they've moved recently, but just lately just seems like the people that are calling us is because of a job change. They're either changing jobs or they got laid off. We don't want to say fired, but the job ended. So, and I don't know if there's a factory locally that's laying off a lot of folks because I had a couple people this week and just seemed like they were calling from the same area, and I don't know where they work, so maybe they were working the same place, but it's just those things that come up, and just kind of a unique, family situation we had here is the mothers had some medical issues. The oldest daughter has Crohn's disease. So the short term, a lot of my alternative options don't necessarily work for them. But then the dad and the younger daughter are, I don't want to say perfect health, but don't have any major health concerns. So they could go with one of the alternatives, because what happened with this family is, again, there was a severance package, and they were going to be okay with the tax subsidy based on their current income projections. And Elijah was working with this family and working things out. Found out, there's going to be a severance package. Well, that severance package bumped them over that 400% threshold that you've heard me mention before. So Marketplace wasn't going to work for the whole family. The good thing is the older daughter actually does have a job and probably will qualify for the Marketplace, and that's going to be a great fit for her. And then we're looking at alternatives for mom, dad, and the youngest. So it's a process, and we take that time to make sure that you're getting the coverage that you need. So I'm kind of focusing maybe a little bit more on Medicare issues today, but I just kind of wanted to relate that certain families situation, and we're trying to make sure that we find something that's affordable for you and gives you the right package of protection that in case something catastrophic happens, we hope they never do. And I know sometimes I've had people call me like, I don't think I need that policy. I haven't used it. Well, thank God you didn't use your cancer policy. We don't want you to use it. It's kind of like, thank God I didn't use my car insurance this week either. I paid it, but I didn't use it because nobody hit me. I know I didn't hit anybody. I didn't have a rock go through my windshield, all those good little things. So, insurance, we don't want to use our insurance. We have to pay for it, but we don't want to use it. And I think I've talked about this before, that we've made health insurance and health care synonymous. And that's where I think people get mixed up on it is, insurance is that transfer of risk. We get it so we hope we never need it. You get homeowners insurance and hope you never have a hailstorm damage your roof or a tornado take the roof off. But you have the insurance just in case, and that's why we hope we don't have these claims, which helps keep insurance costs down. If the insurance companies aren't having to pay out a lot, then they can say, oh, we don't need to raise the rates on these plans. The rates where we have them now are still covering everybody. So one of the things that came up this week, though, was approved and non-approved Medicare costs or non-Medicare-approved costs. So a lot of times we talk about, what's covered, what does Medicare cover? And so that's part of it is Medicare will say certain procedures are covered. With your Medicare Advantage plans, a lot of times you have to have prior authorization for certain procedures. Doesn't mean they won't be covered, but you do have to kind of go through a little bit of extra approval period to make sure that your insurance is going to cover that expense. And again, I mentioned Medicare Advantage, you're going to have a copay that goes along with that. So Medicare doesn't stop you from getting any care. I mean, that's one thing that you have to be careful of is you could go out and have a whole bunch of procedures done, and then find out that none of those procedures are approved by Medicare. And one of those things, I know I've said it before, but it bears repeating, is if you have a Medicare supplement, also referred to as a Medigap plan, they're great. They give you that maximum out-of-pocket protection because after you've paid that $283 Part B deductible with your Medicare, there's 20% of coinsurance that's left over. Well, the great news is if you have, say, a Plan G or even a Plan N, in most cases, that 20% is covered. But that's only if Medicare approved the initial charge. So if Medicare says that's not an approved cost, your Medigap doesn't pay anything either. So whatever that bill's coming in, you are responsible for that bill. So just because you don't run into any roadblocks when you set up or schedule and have procedures done doesn't mean they're covered. So if you've got some, and usually those kind of things come up with, say, a cancer treatment, and somebody recommends, oh, you need to go to this clinic and have that done, or oh, my cousin went to Mexico and they had it done. Well, those are great, and sometimes those are very affordable procedures, but Medicare's not covering that. Maybe it's considered experimental, or maybe you went out of country for a treatment because it's more economical there. I know people do that. I've got a client that has a significant cancer plan because of the history in his family, and had a family member that go to Mexico for the treatment. There are some of those things that come up that aren't covered by Medicare. The other one that throws a lot of people is we talk about skilled nursing. Medicare will pay for the first 20 days of skilled nursing after a hospital stay, but there are restrictions there. You have to have been in the hospital for 3 days. If you're in the hospital but you just can't go home, and the doctor said, well, you need more care than you can receive at home, we want you to go over here to the skilled nursing facility, and so you can get the care that you need because your caregiver at home, your spouse, is not able to do that, or you don't have someone at home to help you with that. Well, if you didn't have that 3 days in the hospital, Medicare's not going to cover that skilled nursing facility. And if Medicare didn't cover that skilled nursing facility, your Medicare supplement doesn't either. Now, I haven't heard about this a lot lately, but a few years ago there was like a 60 Minutes type show. It was one of those news expose shows, and they did a study on all these people that were running up these really astronomical medical bills because they ended up in a skilled nursing facility, and some of them were there for several days or a couple weeks thinking, okay, Medicare's covering all this, and then they get a bill finding out Medicare didn't cover any of it, and then they appeal to their supplement plan, and the supplement says, well, we don't have anything to pay on. Medicare didn't cover this. So there are restrictions with Medicare that you have to be careful of. People, like I said, a lot of people you'll hear complaining about the prior authorizations with the Medicare Advantage plan, but they don't realize that actually it protects you. So you're not going in and having an expensive procedure done. Insurance is going to turn back and say, well, we're not paying for that after you've had it done. You can't take it back. You can't return an MRI. It's been done. So those prior authorizations actually do kind of protect you somewhat. The reason I bring that up is we have plans that will help cover those non-Medicare approved costs. And we talk about, you've heard me talk about the cancer plans, and I talked about it a little bit already today, that's where we find those very useful, kind of as a minimum, a cancer plan, especially if you're on Medicare. And you don't have to be on Medicare. I focus a lot on Medicare on this show, but I also like to encourage that, maybe you're not on Medicare yet, because a lot of the plans we have, as I mentioned, the hospital indemnity plans, those hospital reimbursement benefits, or the lump sum cancer plans. The younger you are when you get plans like that, the less they cost. And those plans generally, and I want to say generally because if I say all the time, then something will come back to bite me on that. But they generally do not raise the rates once you have the plan. I mean, I've got plans that say, well, we would do this for 40 years and we've never raised the rate. Doesn't mean they won't, and doesn't mean they can't. But they haven't in 40 years, so you can kind of be rest assured that those rates aren't going to go up. And if they did go up, it shouldn't be a huge amount, and it will be on everybody that has the plan. I saw something, I'm trying to remember what plan. One of the plans had a small rate increase. They hadn't had rate increases for years, and they did institute a small rate increase. It only applied to people new signing up. So it wasn't people that already had the plan and then get a notice saying, oh, your rate's gone up $5 a month. No, it was just everybody else's. And I'm using an arbitrary number. I don't know what the number was. But they didn't know any better because they had never seen the plan before. It was quoted to them just like we quote, plans to people and say, hey, we think you might like this plan. Take a look, and this is what the rate is. But I said, say you're in your 30s or your 40s, you get the plan now. It's going to cost a lot less than if you wait until you're in your 60s just before you go on Medicare and go, oh, yes, right, I need to get one of these kind of plans. So maybe you're not quite ready for Medicare yet. Maybe you're 60, 62, somewhere in there. You can get it now as a lower rate. These plans, they help cover a lot of the expenses that Medicare might not cover, especially if it's a non-Medicare approved expense. And I say that I don't want you to get the impression there's a whole bunch of things out there that Medicare doesn't pay for. I'm talking about also there's a lot of expenses that are non-medical. And even though in your book, in your opinion, maybe you consider them medical, but CMS and the health insurance companies do not consider as medical. Some of those things are like home health aides or having some improvements done on your property because now you need a wheelchair ramp or you need to widen the doors. There's all kinds of things that sometimes people need some accommodations to be able to stay in their home, and some of the plans will help you cover that because you're paid on the diagnosis. You're paid on having the need, and so then you take that money and use it, how you need to do it. Some are specific. Some plans are very, very rigid in you have to have a contract with somebody, that's licensed to provide that care, and then they'll pay it. So there's just so many different ways that you can protect yourself against these excess. I don't want to say excess. These other charges or expenses that you weren't expecting, and nobody expects those. I mean, I used the example back, about a month ago when we were having the Snowmageddon, and we were a little concerned, because the last time we had an ice storm like that, our power was out for a couple days, and got kind of chilly in the house, and we're thinking, well, hey, great, we have the camper now with gas heat, and we can turn on the propane if the power goes out and move out into the camper and at least stay warm there, and gas stove, we can cook stuff on the stove and make coffee and have hot soup and survive. Well, that Friday night the heater blower didn't work, so it was like Now we got to worry about the house, keeping the house warm and keeping the pipes from freezing and everything else, but we had power. So we were able to get that fixed, but that was an expense we weren't prepared for. So anyway, sorry I went a little over here, but we'll take a quick break and I'll be right back.
Hi, this is Marvin Long, your local business solutions consultant. At Twin Lakes, we believe strong communities start with strong connections. For 75 years, we've been proud to serve this region, and today that commitment continues with our 100% fiber network. With gig speed fiber and local 24/7 support, we're here to keep your business running smoothly. Let's talk about how Twin Lakes can power your success. Learn more by calling 931-476-2151 or visit twinlakes.net.
Upper Cumberland Habitat for Humanity invites you to lace up for the 4th annual 5K Race to Build Hope, happening Saturday, March 28th in Overton County. Every step you take helps build a home right here in our community, with proceeds benefiting the Overton County Habitat Build. Register by March 5th to guarantee your swag bag and t-shirt. Build hope, build homes, one step at a time. It's the 4th annual 5K Race to Build Hope, Saturday, March 28th in Overton County. Register at uchabitat.org.
And now, back to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby Insurance.
All right, welcome back to Insurance Matchmaking. So I got into a few of the plan or scenarios of things that come up, the difference between the approved and non-approved cost, or sometimes things aren't covered, that you have carriers that'll charge over the CMS approved amount. And it's like, and generally that's not going to happen so much with if you're on Medicare, but if you don't have Medicare, sometimes you're at the mercy of whatever that provider is charging, and especially if you find out your insurance is going to cover it. So networks are important. Make sure you ask before you schedule a procedure or a test, clarify with them, is this a Medicare covered expense? And generally they're going to know if Medicare's been covering it or not. I know like dentists are very good about, well, your insurance is good, here's the estimate of how much your insurance is going to pay, and this is going to be the remainder. And, of course, a lot of times they'll say, well, if you pay that today, you only have to pay this. But if we have to bill it, it's going to be $20 more or whatever. So you do need to, be proactive on what you're being charged, not necessarily just expect to go in and not pay anything else. So I thought about that. I had an eye appointment yesterday, and as I'm getting ready to check out, I'm going, there's the sign that says, copays are expected to be paid today. Now, well, I knew I didn't have any copays, but I start thinking, it's like, well, am I going to have to remind them I don't have copays? And I didn't. Everything went fine. But I was thinking of as, here I am, the insurance agent, and I just didn't review maybe on the way in that, hey, I'm not going to be paying for anything today, right? So, even I forget to think about, well, hey, is this covered or not? And, and my insurance has changed. For years I had my TRICARE because I retired from the Army, and then now I'm on Medicare, and so I have a little bit different procedures when it comes to the billing for my health care. And so, yes, I need to be on top of it also. So those are some of the things there. I have a plan that I wanted to go over, but I think I'm going to cover it maybe more in the next show. It's what do we call it? We have what's called home health plans, and then we've got this plan that's called the recovery plan. But I think my next show I'm going to be covering a little bit more about the different kinds of plans that are available. But one of the things, and I need to make a copy of it and put it up on my website, or actually post it on my Facebook page, is if you're on Medicare, you should have that Medicare and You book. They send you a new book every year. And it used to be, and they probably have a copy at the library. They used to have, like, stacks of them would come into the library every year, and you could go pick them up. The ship office may have them. I generally don't like to recommend people there because they try to keep you from talking to people like me. So I don't generally recommend, and sometimes I've felt that some of the advisors, because a lot of them are volunteers, that sometimes the advice they're giving is not correct. I've run into that, and not to point fingers at anybody, but they don't go through the rigorous training that I have to. I have to recertify every year, review the rules. Sometimes the rules change, but I have to take a certification every year. I have to pay for it. It costs me more than my license just to be able to talk to people about their Medicare Advantage and their Part D prescription drug plans. My other insurance that I am able to offer, I don't have to do that training, and there's some agents that will only do the Medigap plans because they don't want to do that certification. I want to be able to be very well versed on what is available for you and to make sure that you're getting that coverage. And if you've listened to my show for any amount of time, if I find I can't help you, I'm going to say, yep, that's the plan. The plan you have is one I would have recommended if I was recommending you change, but that's the plan you have. Stick with the coverage. Elijah's been running some appointments. We purchased some preset appointments. He went out and did some in-home appointments like I used to do. I don't generally do that anymore. I usually have people come to my office or do a Zoom meeting or something like that so that I can kind of present face-to-face, but just do it over the phone. In fact, I did one this week, a couple in Arizona. I'm not licensed in Arizona, but their permanent resident is here in Tennessee, but they're in Arizona right now. So, and they talked to an agent there in Arizona and said, oh, no, you need to get your insurance from Tennessee. Here, I found this guy for you. And I think I don't remember if the insurance agent called me first and then they contacted me. So, yes, I can do things long distance. And I'm licensed in other states. If you're a listener on the show and you go, oh, I need this guy to talk to my mom, or oh, my older sister's going to be 65 this year, I wonder if she talks. Connect them with me. I may not be licensed in that state. I can still kind of give some general information. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with someone in a state I'm not licensed in, but I also have contacts in those states, and so I can find somebody that I feel will give the same courtesy and care to that individual as that you would expect me to do. So just because you're not in Tennessee doesn't mean I can't help you. And I do a lot of stuff in Kentucky. So Tennessee and Kentucky I feel like Kentucky's almost, a resident state for me when it comes to insurance. We're not that far from the border. I used to do I have a lot of clients in the Lexington area still. So from my previous company that I worked with before I was independent. So those are some things I could help with there, but there are a lot of plans that come up. Like I said, I want to cover that in another show. I was going down, I was saying something and I got down a rabbit hole, and I apologize for that. But the making sure that the plan's right for you, that's what I'm going to do. Oh, I was talking about Elijah went out on these presets, and there was at least 3 people that it was just, yep, that's what you should have. And here's my card. Here's an extra card. If you know somebody I can help that maybe doesn't have the coverage you have that needs it, I can help them get that plan. So there are things, we're firm believers, and I'm glad Elijah really has that kind of the attitude that I do also, that we want to make sure that you're well covered, even if it doesn't mean a sale for us. And I know a lot of agents that's the way they operate. Now, you call an 800 number and that agent has a quota to meet, you're not going to get that same level of coverage. Their goal is they have to, it's like they're required to sell you something when they pick up that phone. And they know they're not going to do it every time, but they're going to come at it of, you called me, we're going to get, you're going to leave with a different policy. And sometimes they just change your policy just so they get credit for writing a policy. It's not a good fit for you. And that's why I always encourage, when at all possible, work with a local agent. But that's also why, we put stuff out on Facebook. I'm getting ready to do some advertising. We're going to be doing some of the Welcome to Medicare workshops like I do in person. I'm going to be doing some as webinars, and some of those it may just be a matter of I'm going to send you a pre-recorded copy of my Medicare 101 information so that you can kind of have a good idea of how the Medicare works. And then when we talk in the future, kind of have a game plan, what way you want to go, because I always say there's the two forks in the road. You can go the old, sometimes referred to as the traditional method of your government original Medicare A and B with a Medigap plan and add a separate Part D, and then maybe some other plans to go along with that. Or you say, I want that all in one. I like the zero premium. I want the Medicare Part C. That's what Medicare calls the Medicare Advantage plans. But you do have some restrictions with those. There are also, as I say, there's going to be a pay-as-you-go. The Medigap plan, you pay for coverage. The Medicare Part C Advantage plan, you pay as you go. Every plan is going to have a maximum out of pocket, and that can be, as low as $2,000, but it can be over $10,000 a year, and those numbers reset. Your Part D max out of pocket is separate from that medical max out of pocket. So the Part D max out of pocket, that's going to apply whichever fork of the road you take, whether you have a standalone Part D or your Part D is included in your Part C Advantage plan. And they operate the same whether it's with the Medicare Advantage or it's a separate Part D. So those then the maximum out of pocket this year is $2,100. There is a up to $615 deductible. Most plans are charging that $615 deductible, at least the standalone drug plans, not necessarily all the Advantage plans, but much more of the Advantage plans this year, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, have instituted that deductible. I had somebody was asking me about the Trump RX, in which I covered that a couple shows back. You can't use that if you're on Medicare. And he was complaining about, he had to spend over $600 when he went to pick up his prescription. I had to remind him that you have a deductible each year, and you have to pay the first $615, and then you'll be back to paying those $40-some copays that you were paying. It happens every year, and there's always at least one client that I have to remind that, yes, you have a big bill because you didn't meet the deductible yet this year. It will go, when you go back the next time to the pharmacy, it won't be so much. And then you've got the other people that have a lot of prescriptions, and especially if they have things like Xarelto or Eliquis. And there was a couple of drugs, I should have written those down, that they're cancer drugs. And I wasn't familiar with the name of them, but there are ongoing costs that you're going to be taking those as part of your cancer treatments. Even if you finish like your chemo or your radiation, there's some prescriptions that you have to still take for 5 years, and they're still very expensive. The good news is most insurance companies are covering them, but you're going to have that that $2,000 plus max out of pocket every year. And again, that's why we encourage people to consider a cancer plan, because then you have that money. You can, hey, when you get it, put it in the bank and know that, hey, next year I'm going to have to pay another $2,000 on my prescriptions before everything's covered. I've got the money in the bank for that because I had that cancer plan. So we're at the end of the show here. As I said, next show I'm going to talk about the different plans we have to offer and get into the Recovery Care Plan. So stay tuned to Grace 107.7. Remember, at Libby Insurance, we can cover you head to toe. It doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg, and we'll talk to you next week.
You've been listening to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance.